Welcome to a special edition of India Ascents. I'm Gauri Dwivedi, and this is an edition where we talk about why 2025 was a landmark year for India and its journey towards superpowerhood. From organizing the world's largest human gathering that the world has ever seen, which is the Mahakumbh, to launching an airstrike on Pakistan to retaliate for the Pahalgam terror attack, to hosting President Putin at a time when the world is scrambling for solutions to end the Ukraine war, to becoming the fifth largest economy in the world by dislodging the UK. It's been a phenomenal year for India. Add to it the launch of India's heaviest satellite and a much needed and a much celebrated win in Women's World Cup. We're going to try and cover all that for you, viewers. This is a very special edition of India Ascents.
सैकड़ों किलोमीटर दुश्मन की धरती पर घुस करके मिट्टी में मिला दिया.
Now, this was a year when India avenged the tragic terror attack with a deadly military assault on Pakistan that left most of its air bases in complete ruins. In Pahalgam, 26 Indians were killed, 25 of whom were butchered for being a Hindu. It was a genocide, and India responded to it in the strongest terms. It launched Operation Sindoor, avenged the Pahalgam terror attack. 2025 was a year when India set a new doctrine, drew a red line, declared that any act of terror is an act of war. India also dispatched its parliamentarians around the world to name and shame Pakistan, the world's biggest terror factory. So what all did we manage to do in those 4 days? Tell Pakistan not to mess with us ever again? This report has those answers.
The year 2025 witnessed a 4-day conflict between two nuclear neighbors as India avenged the Pak-perpetrated Pahalgam terror attack. In 4 days, India destroyed multiple Pakistani military bases, destroyed 9 major terror launch pads in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. The message was clear. India established its air superiority over Pakistan and crippled its air assets and ended the war after its military objectives were achieved.
India's bold and precise attacks restored the rightful place of offensive air action in the national consciousness. Our robust air defense architecture and offensive employment of long-range surface-to-air missile systems limited the adversary's freedom to operate and ensured safety of our vital assets.
जब जब पाकिस्तान एयरफोर्स ने हमारे एयरफील्ड्स और लॉजिस्टिक इंस्टॉलेशंस में 9 और 10 मई की रात को लगातार हमले किए, वो इस मजबूत एयर डिफेंस ग्रिड के सामने विफल हो गए.
But it didn't end there. India launched a global outreach campaign to name and shame Pakistan, the fountainhead of global terror. India sent 7 delegations comprising of 50 parliamentarians to 33 countries. A bipartisan exercise to send India's message to all global capitals that New Delhi's military response was the result of Pak-sponsored terrorist attack which identified Hindus and shot them in cold blood. The global campaign aimed to isolate Pakistan at all avenues, from FATF to the UN, and ensure Pakistan's terror financing lines are completely choked. Operation Sindoor brought to fore India's long-standing challenge regarding the Pakistan-China collusion. From intelligence to specific military inputs, Pakistan relied on China, was aided by Turkey and Azerbaijan, the two-front war for which New Delhi has long been prepared for.
The success of Operation Sindoor also brought to fore India's sustained investment and focus on indigenous defence manufacturing. In fact, indigenous defence production hit a record 1.27 lakh crore rupees. Exports, defence export, clocked upwards of 23,000 crore rupees. Well, nothing tells this better than the export of the BrahMos missile to Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, and 2026 looks at bringing all those countries a lot more from India. Now, it's unusual for a bilateral relationship to witness so many seesaws in just a single year. But 2025 was one such year for the India-US bilateral relationship. And now this is a very consequential bilateral partnership, viewers. Everything from closer ties from technology to trade, all of it gets packed in this relationship. So 2025 actually started, this year started with the Prime Minister meeting President Trump just 3 weeks into his presidential tenure. And India, in fact, was the early mover to close a trade pact. Listen in.
मागा प्लस मीगा तब बन जाता है मेगा पार्टनरशिप और प्रॉस्पेरिटी। हम दोनों का मिलने का मतलब 1+1 2 नहीं, 1 और 1 11 होता है।
He's doing a great job in India. Everybody talks about it. He's doing a really fantastic job. A great leader.
मैं समझता हूं पूरी दुनिया में डील शब्द का कॉपीराइट एक ही व्यक्ति का है और उस व्यक्ति का नाम है ट्रंप।
But the bonhomie in the Oval Office soon made for some sharp attacks. Why? Because India's denials to President Trump's desire and his repeated assertions to take credit for ending the India-Pakistan conflict had an impact. It had an impact on the partnership, even as the Prime Minister made India's position clear on the floor of Parliament. So this year saw the worst of racial attacks leveled by the senior-most members of Donald Trump's administration, officials who went to great lengths to, in fact, demean India by coming out with statements, everything from India being the Maharaja of tariffs to India being Kremlin's laundromat to Brahmins profiteering from cheap Russian oil. It just kept going. It then also went that it called Ukraine conflict Modi's war. That's what it said. And it also went on to say, these members of the Trump administration, that India doesn't care about Ukrainians being killed. Listen in to what Peter Navarro actually said when he mentioned some of these choicest of expletives being used for its most valued partner, India.
Prior to the invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, India bought virtually no Russian oil. I mean, it was like 1% of their needs. So the argument somehow now, as the percentage has gone up to like 30 and 35%, they don't need the oil. It's a refining profiteering scheme. It's a laundromat for the Kremlin. That's the reality.
Trade talks, technological cooperation, military purchases, all left at the altar of personal hubris of Donald Trump, which witnessed Trump administration singling out India for purchasing Russian oil, despite not being the only one and most certainly not being the biggest purchaser of Russian oil and natural gas. This was a year, viewers, when India stood its ground, telling both the world and Donald Trump that hypocrisy will be called out, and India will do so at every forum. As energy security remained and continues to do so, it remains a key consideration for our foreign policy goals and objectives. Strategic autonomy are not just big buzzwords. This year witnessed India actioning its long-cherished foreign policy ideal, driving with President Putin and almost high-fiving with President Xi Jinping. Yes, this report tells you why India was at the center of the world's most powerful selfie this year. The world's most powerful selfie, sending a message to the world's most powerful man, US President Donald Trump. After weeks of disparaging comments and racist attacks from the Trump administration, India responded. The leaders of India, Russia, and China met at the sidelines of the SCO summit in Tianjin in China in September 2025. The show of unity meant India will not be pushed into a corner and it has options.
एससीओ को लेकर भारत की सोच और नीति 3 मुख्य स्तंभों पर आधारित है। SCO, S security, C connectivity, O opportunity.
Months later, New Delhi rolled out the red carpet for President Putin, and as the two leaders who rode together, the optics were clear. India decided its own foreign policy on its own terms and will not be bowed down by any external pressure.
एक्सेलेंसी, मैं मानता हूं कि ये जो 2001 में आपने जो भूमिका अदा की, एक विजनरी लीडर कैसे सोचता है, कहां से शुरू करता है और संबंधों को कहां तक पहुंचा सकता है, इसका एक उत्तम उदाहरण भारत रशिया के संबंध है.
India's purchase of Russian oil, its deep defense and economic bilateral ties with Russia have been called out by Western capitals. They all wanted India to take a side. As the world's third largest importer of energy, for New Delhi there was only one side, one of national interest. As President Putin chose India for his first foreign visit, hours after meeting Trump's envoys for yet another round of unsuccessful peace talks, it was clear that the road to peace went not via Brussels or Berlin, but possibly via New Delhi. 2025 witnessed India perfecting the fine balance of negotiating with global powers on its own terms, keeping its interest and its sovereign interest at the very center. On that note, we slip into a very short break. We come back on the other side, get you all other aspects of why this year was so special for India. Stay with us. One of the most powerful optics this year was all global tech CEOs making a beeline for India, one of the world's key economic engines powering the global economy, growing at a world-beating 8% plus. From trade pacts to massive investments by tech giants, India is now at the center of the next big economic wave. And this report tells you why it will lift all boats around the world. 2025 was a year that saw the who's who of global technology giants make a beeline for India. Microsoft and Amazon have together announced sweeping plans to invest heavily into AI systems in India with investments over $53 billion. Add to it Cognizant, Intel investments, and you get a much larger figure. To streamline and grow the semiconductor ecosystem in India, all global tech giants are betting on India. By its scale, thriving tech landscape, India will be the leader for the artificial intelligence adoption. Finding ways to harmonize multiple regulations for infrastructure development will be a key priority.
AI is reshaping our polity, our economy, our security, and even our society.
But it's not just tech. As the world's fastest growing economy, India is now a rising boat that is lifting others, particularly those in the developed world that are witnessing sub 2% growth rates. Tapping into the potential that India has to offer, 2025 saw the UK Prime Minister bring the largest trade delegation to India, followed by the EU delegation that comprised all the commissioners. Global growth stands at 3.2%. The Indian economy clocked 8.2% in the last quarter. This came in despite an unjustified 50% tariff hike by US on Indian goods and a weakening rupee. 2026 could see a trade pact with the US, which will unleash a new wave of investments. India is the big economic engine that the world is now relying more and more on. For long, India was viewed as the outsourcing capital of the world, but it is now looking to become the AI capital of the world. India will host the AI Action Summit early next year, as it looks to become the perfect bridge between the capitalist-led American model and the state-led, almost surveillance-focused Chinese model. And that bridge is what is going to define AI for around the world. India's space mission has reached incredible new heights. Air Force Group Captain Shubhanshu Shukla became India's first astronaut to travel to the International Space Station. As Shukla touched new heights and limits of space travel, a new era in space began back home, where India is no longer a participant but a leader with a plan. Shukla's 18-day mission, including indigenous experiments aimed at enhancing understanding of human space flight and microgravity science, a singular mission has set the course for India's space sector, now rebuilding, leading and shaping the future. Through missions that are both low cost as well as high impact, India has already announced 1,000 crore rupee investments into its space program, earmarked specifically for venture fund to space startups. India's space startup scene has in fact exploded, growing from just one in 2014 to now over 400 11 years later, building everything from launch vehicles to lunar rovers, from not just for India but for the world. Meanwhile, ISRO aims bigger, bolder as it readies its heavy lift rocket to launch a 6.1-ton class communications satellite into low Earth orbit. So when Shukla said with pride, "Sare jahan se acha," India took it as a challenge. Listen in.
अब जैसे मेरी ये यात्रा खत्म होने वाली है, आपकी और मेरी यात्रा अभी बहुत लंबी है. हमारी ह्यूमन स्पेस मिशन की जो यात्रा है वो बहुत लंबी है और बहुत कठिन भी है. लेकिन मैं आपको विश्वास दिलाता हूं कि अगर हम निश्चय कर लें तो तारा अभी प्राप्यन्ते, इवन स्टार्स आर अटेनेबल. आज का भारत स्पेस से महत्वाकांक्षी दिखता है. आज का भारत निडर दिखता है. आज का भारत कॉन्फिडेंट दिखता है. आज का भारत गर्व से पूर्ण दिखता है. और इन्हीं सब कारणों की वजह से मैं एक बार फिर से कह सकता हूं कि आज का भारत अभी भी सारे जहां से अच्छा दिखता है.
India's countdown to a new space age has begun. For a billion Indians, Shubhanshu Shukla's journey is more than a mission. It's a signal. Our future is out there in the stars. Now, from the world's largest tent city in Mahakumbh to the flag hoisting ceremony that marked the completion of the Grand Temple in Ayodhya, this was a year when India embraced its cultural heritage, its spiritual moorings, and doubled down on its yearning to break free from the colonial mindset, or as we say, the Macaulay mindset. But it did not just end there. This was a year when India ensured that it captured all global cultural destinations. Well, take Indian cinema. This was a year that Homebound made it to the shortlist for Best International Feature Film category in the Oscars. Well, King of Bollywood, Shah Rukh Khan actually made his Met Gala debut finally. Move ahead. Banu Mushtaq's win at the International Booker Prize brought the spotlight squarely back on Indian authors and women authors and the global appeal of their writing. Viewers, the inclusion of Deepavali in UNESCO's Intangible Cultural Heritage of Humanity list marks a historic milestone for India's rich cultural legacy. The recognition celebrates Deepavali not just as a festival, but as a living tradition that symbolizes the victory of light over darkness, knowledge over ignorance, hope over despair. And that brings us to an end of this very special edition of India Ascents. It was a phenomenal year, viewer, this year, and it sets the stage for what will be an equally defining 2026. Thanks so much for watching.